Welcome to the war, and for those who celebrated, a happy Thanksgiving. I thought I'd put together a game, and based on a comment I got in another video the other day, I thought it would be fun to put together another Rebels and Patriots game. It's a game I enjoy a lot, and it's one of those games I just keep meaning to play more of, and one thing gets in the way, and then we're off to the races with another project. But that being said, today we're going to be playing a mission. The scenario G in the Rebels and Patriots book. It's called Widow Creek Bridge. In this instance, the British will be the attackers and the Americans will be the defenders. And there's quite a unique mission set up for this. First of all, let me just read you the preamble. It says, the attacker and the defender try to outmarch each other. The attacker's got information that the Widow Creek Bridge, that's here, is poorly defended and sends a company to attack and secure the bridge. The defender realizes the attacker's plan and sends reinforcements to hold the bridge. The race is on. Now, the interesting thing here is, and I'm playing this, Rebels and Patriots, I think, has quite a specific compass to how you set up terrain and the various components of the table, where your forces are deployed, etc., etc. So in this instance, I am playing this as if the top of the table there, at the top of your screen, is the north, and the bottom is the south, the left is the east, and the right is the west. Now that being said, this game has unique deployment. Yes, we're fighting over the bridge. That's a part of the game. But rather than what I was expecting, that the attackers are coming on over here and the defenders have got to defend it here. In fact, a part of the defenders' force is going, in this case, the Americans' force, is going to be on either by the bridge here, and then the rest of the force and the attackers are going to be down here on either side of the river. So it's quite unique. I did have to read it a few times to make sure I fully understood it, and I hope I've got it right. I couldn't really find any reference material to counter it, but I've followed the rules of the deployment, I feel, to the letter. So with that being said, that's the mission. We're gonna work out, it's an 8-turn game, and then we roll to see if there's an extra turn. And then there's a number of different objectives for the attacker. They've got to take the bridge, make sure there's no one on it, make sure the defenders are thrown off the what we're calling the breastworks, but I've got the fences here that are going to be used there. And then for the defender, they need to hold the bridge and try and take less than 33% casualties. So I'm sort of envisioning that this side of the table isn't going to be used a whole lot. It's really the brunt of the action is going to be over here. And yes, if I didn't describe, the game's played on a 4x4 table. So the river there sort of marks the boundaries going in each direction, and then the road the other. So it's a 4x4 table. So now let's go take a look at the forces and see what we're bringing into the game today. Okay, starting with the British, and they've got 24 points to make up their company. They are led by the ever-present loyal disciplinarian Second Lieutenant Desmond Ainsley of the 44th Essex. His special ability, or his leader ability, is strategist. That lets him do some fancy shenanigan redeployments once the forces are set up. And in both of my previous games, that's been incredibly useful. So he's returning with his company of line infantry. There's another unit of line infantry at the back here. They also have a unit of lights here, a unit of natives, and a unit of shock troops, which in this case are Highlanders. So quite a robust force there. Again, I really don't fear those shock troops. They're incredible. They've always performed well. So that's the British. Let's take a look at the Continental. So these forces have 18 points, and if you've watched the last Rebels and Patriots battle report I shot or created, unfortunately, their Lieutenant Edward Flowers was killed at the end of the game. So I had to create a new leader or commander for them. And in this case, it's Thomas Bradham. He's still over here with a remarkable resemblance to his predecessor. And on the ability chart for him, I roll a 46, which is for, I believe this is Latin, Fortuna Belli, which allows him to have one complete, or this side of the force, to have one complete reroll of any set of dice for either side once per game, which I think that might be incredibly useful too. So who's he leading? He's leading a unit of line infantry there, another unit of line infantry here, my beloved Connecticut unit. And then the two units I've got always have problems with. 2 units of militia, and so they're basically line infantry, but they're green. They have -1 to their activation orders, and then just to round it out, a unit of light cavalry. So that's the force there. Again, I look at these two forces and I feel like the Americans are hopelessly. They're not outnumbered in terms of units. Each side has 5 units. But my gosh, the quality of troops is significant. So I am curious to see how this plays. I'm going to move to deployment. The British, as the attacker, deploy everything first. Then there's a fraction of the army deploys by the bridge, and the rest deploys on the right side here of the river. So I'll go get things deployed, and then we'll get started. Deployment's complete. Let's talk about this. So the attackers, in this case the British, deployed first. I put the natives kind of in the trees or amongst the trees because they're not suffered, or they don't suffer any penalty for moving through those. And then from left to right here, we've got the shock troops, the Highlanders, a unit of line, and then the commander here sort of staying in the middle. And ultimately, I think this unit, the natives, and this unit of line, they're going to move forward. But again, interestingly, the way this deployment is situated means that both armies, really from the get-go on this side of the table, are able to shoot at each other or just engage right away. I should note the river described in the scenario says this should be 6 inches wide. The river model that I have is a little thinner than that, but either way, compensating or adding a little bit here and there, they're still well within range. So I think it's quite likely that the lights over here are going to take a shot at the Americans. And now let's have a quick chat about them. So they, I think, have or tried to deploy a little further away, using this gap in the woods here to run through and help secure the bridge. But I can see them, possibly the unit here of line looking to harass the forces over on this side a little bit. We'll see how that plays out. And then, oh my gosh, for my sins, I've put the 2 units of militia as the 4 to 6 points of the force that are defending the bridge in this case. And even though they're hedges, I said they're meant to represent barricades, and they count as hard cover and obstacles. So we'll see if they can pull off being able to pass some of those activation checks that have been the bane of their existence in all the games I played with them. So we'll see if that works out for them. Again, just from a points perspective, it would have been a little challenging. I wouldn't have been able to put any of each of these units is 4 points each, so I would have only been able to put one of them, and that didn't really seem enough to me. So I put 2 units here, and hopefully they can be they can get it together and take some shots against the British over here. So with that being said, yeah, we've got things set up, and we'll start, like I said, 8-turn game, and then we roll to see if there's an extra turn. But I think we're ready to start with turn 1. Let's go. Okay, at the end of the first turn, and quite a successful one for the Americans. But I'll start with the British. So the shock troopers here on the left, they failed their activation. However, they took advantage of the commander's special ability and were able to deploy ahead outside of their deployment zone in the first turn. So they've managed, even though they failed their activation, they've managed to sort of stay in line. You can see then here the middle unit of line infantry also advanced. The natives advanced through the woods. However, they did take 2 casualties from this unit of militia. This unit of militia failed to activate, but they were going to shoot at the lights here, who I decided, as kind of contrary to what I was initially thinking, I decided to advance them really just sort of trying to overwhelm the defending militia 2 units here. So sort of everything's sort of moved forward on this side. However, over to the Americans, I then elected to hold back this unit with the commander to shoot at their counterpart on the British side, and they rolled tremendously well and actually inflicted 4 casualties and put a disorder marker on this unit of line. So very successful, I would say, consider it successful shooting activation there. That is certainly that's going to give me pause for thought what to do with them in the next turn. Now that being said, over here the cavalry advanced, so they're certainly kind of leading the way, well in advance of everyone else, and the other unit of line, the Connecticut line infantry here, they've advanced as well. So that's the end of the first turn. Again, it's suddenly looking very daunting for this unit of militia here. They've got 4 units bearing down on them pretty fast and hard, and already failed 1 activation. So excited to see what happens in turn 2. Let's get to it. Turn 2, and this one was a punishing one for the Americans. So the British were able to take by force the breastworks and now control at least the road and the defenses that were thrown up by the defenders in pretty spectacular fashion. So first of all, let's just start with the more mundane stuff. The shock cavalry, the shock infantry over here advanced, still staying in line with this unit of line that's here. I did think about shooting with them, but elected against it. And then lastly, this unit with the commander elected not to roll off the disorder marker that they've got, and they just purely advanced. However, over here, the big action was with the natives. They charged this unit of militia, inflicted a number of casualties, forcing them back, then used a follow-up move. That's why they're now on the road, and attacked again. And this caused, again, another disorder marker. So they're now with 2 disorder markers. And then similarly, while the British Lights, they also took a casualty in the fight and took a disorder marker. But they were able to push back more succinctly this unit of militia and automatically cause 2 disorder tokens there. So, and in both cases, on the American turn, both units of militia failed their rally tests, and again had to move back. That's why they're so far back now from the position they were defending. However, it's not all doom and gloom, because according to the victory conditions of the game, or the way that victory points or honor points are awarded, it doesn't seem to be about, let me clarify. Holding the bridge is certainly a way to earn victory points, but you get more points for actually just removing everything from this side of the table. So even if the militia here, recuperate, regather themselves, however you want to describe that, if they're still alive, that's not an insignificant win at the end of the game for them, or bonus for them at the end of the game. Now, that's maybe that's all a little bit fidgety and gamey. We'll get to that as the game progresses. Now, that being said, on the American, what I'm calling their reserve side of things, this unit of cavalry has moved on to the road. They're, I think, in a good position to do some damage, I think, in the next turn, or maybe in the next couple of turns. And then both units of American line infantry moved up over onto the hill here. So they're also kind of bringing themselves into the game, I think, a little bit more in the next turn or two. So yeah, an interesting second turn, and my gosh, I can't get over just how that just -1 discipline really does make such a difference. Almost, I don't even think it's that. I just think they're just incredibly unlucky. I mean, failing some of these tests, if it was by 1 or 2, then I could understand, but they fail consistently low. They're rolling like 2s and 3s. They aren't going to help anyone. Anyway, that being said, let's move on with turn 3. A somewhat pensive turn 3, plenty of movement, but not a lot of action. So let's just start here. The shock infantry, the Highlanders, failed their activation, so they didn't get to activate in any way. This unit of line with the commander moved forward. They still got a disorder marker, but I think getting them into position right now is more important than rallying, which is what the lights did here. They actually rallied, so they're in good shape now to continue in the next turn. Over here, this unit of line advanced onto the road, so they've now got a pretty commanding line of sight down the road and through the covered bridge there. Everything is currently out of range, but I'm sure that's going to change in the next turn. And then over here, bearing in mind what I'd said before about, or in the previous turn, that units on this side of the river do still count for victory points, as it were. The natives advanced. They're looking to polish off the rest of the militia, which, let's talk about these. So first of all, you're going to notice it's a little empty over here. So this unit of militia did very well. They rallied and removed their markers. The other unit rolled a 3, and they had 2 pin markers, taking down to 1, and they're green. So that everything I said in the last turn about them not failing by just 1 point, this made a real difference here. So they broke, and they're now off the table. It is not looking good at all over here. So that being said, over on this side of the river, the militia on a horseback, or the light cavalry, they're holding back. I don't want to push them too far ahead and let them get stranded or overrun just yet. So they've got some support from the line infantry that are here. I think they could be in a good position to start shooting across the water, and they still have their first fire. They haven't fired yet, so that might be beneficial for this turn. And then lastly, this unit of line for the Americans with their commander failed to activate. So slow going or tough going here, but I think it might be a pretty interesting 4th turn as we look to see some developments come. And I can't believe this will be halfway through the game, or it could potentially halfway through the game. This game moves very fast, but I like that. So let's see what happens in turn 4. Turn 4. Okay, let's start with the British. So the Islanders this time did activate. They've moved ahead now onto the river here. The line infantry failed to activate. So it was their turn to mess this up. So they're still kind of stuck or staying put where they are. This unit, let's see, what did they do? They fired at the unit here and put a rally or a pin, what am I saying here? A disorder token on them, getting my games mixed up there. And then this unit also failed to activate, so they weren't able to do anything. And then, really unfortunately, the unit of natives here rolled a double 1 in order to perform their activation. So not only to perform an attack, so not only did they get stuck not being able to really do anything, but the effect also was the brown trousers roll on the double 1 roll, which basically means that the British are going to have -1 to their honor points at the end of the game. So that's a pretty significant hit there. So for the Americans, the militia here bravely fought back. They fired and inflicted 1 casualty, which did lead to a disorder marker. So good. So they're clinging on there as best as they can. And then over here, I'm sort of trying to figure out sort of a sequence of activations here that could potentially work. So the unit of line there on the left from this side, they advanced. I think they're in a good position to shoot in the next turn. They are also the closest unit. So even though I rallied off the point of disorder for this unit here, they should be able to attack back in the next turn and again make full use of their first fire bonus. And then lastly, I moved the cavalry just to the very entrance of the bridge there. They're out of range, or they're at long range for the unit there with the yellow flag to shoot at them. So I think they've got a little bit of a bonus there. If the lights there try to shoot at them, they'll also, I think, get the benefit of cover. So I think they're in a good position there, or should be able to at least weather the storm. And then I do sort of have in mind that it might be in the Americans' best interest to just blast away at the British from this side of the river, not trying to take the bridge or anything like that. So, or at least not yet. So there's a sort of a plan forming there. And, you know, the first couple of turns, I really thought this was going to be a rollover for the British, but I don't, an easy win for the British, but I don't think it is. I think this might go the distance. So, all right, let's move on to the next turn. That'll be turn 5. Turn 5, and again, I may have spoken too soon. This looks like it's going all the British way. So let's just start with the simple stuff. The unit of shock infantry here is feeling fairly unneeded at this point. They just advanced around to this side of the river, of the road. The unit of line here fired, even though it was at long range, fired at the militia cavalry here and inflicted 2 casualties and put a disorder pin on them. So not good there. This left things fairly easily for the lights here to hop over the defense there and are now in control or command of the bridge. And then I elected to move this unit with the commander in it for the British out of the short range, at least, for the units of line over here that were still threatening them. And then somewhat of an interesting situation here with the natives, which ultimately was for naught. They had a combat with the militia that was here, pushed them back, did a follow-up, attacked again, and in that follow-up attack, they came off the worse for wear. Actually, they ended up with an extra pin, and they lost a person. And that unit of militia ended up being somewhat all the way over here, pretty much out of range of anyone being able to really catch them or do anything with them. So that was sort of an ironic twist. However, they then went and failed their morale check and broke. So they're off the table, leaving, yes, this side of the river well in British hands. Now, it's not all doom and gloom for the Americans, even though they are now, yes, they're now down to just 3 units. But those 3 units are in pretty good shape. So the 2 units of line both fired on the commander's unit in taking inflicting 1 casualty apiece. Using the American commander's special ability to use that reroll that he's got. That still probably could have been a little bit more effective, but anyway, it did the job for now. So that unit of British has been sort of whittled down, and then unfortunately, though, the militia cavalry was not able to roll off that pin. So I'm somewhat sorry, that disorder marker, bold action creeping in again there, but I'm somewhat hopeful, at least from the American perspective, that the British lights there fail their activation. Otherwise, I think they're going to be pouring in quite a number of shots to the militia here. So yeah, that's how things go. This is not looking good for the colonials, but it's not over yet. Let's see what happens in turn 6. In turn 6, all of the action is very much focused around the covered bridge here. So starting with the British side of things, both this unit of shock here and the unit of line sort of moved, activated to move it and advance, creating, just really kind of filling up the road there. The natives failed to rally. They had their 2 disorder markers, and this unit with the commander pulled back a little bit further, but they still took a casualty from this unit of line shooting at them. Now, the main action, be remiss to say, the main action was, yes, the light infantry here failed to activate. They weren't able to activate and shoot at the cavalry. So even though, and now switching to the American side, even though the Americans had, or the cavalry unit had, a disorder marker on them and would be rolling only half the dice in close combat or any kind of attack, I figured it was now or never. So I charged them in onto the bridge, and they were able to inflict 2 casualties and a disorder marker on the lights. The lights in return weren't able to do anything to the cavalry, and with the fact that the units had been so closely around them, they actually took another casualty because they couldn't retreat far enough further. And actually, I'd be remiss to say that that actually all happened before the this unit got shot at. They were initially more kind of over here, and were also preventing the lights from retreating their full way. So that really, hampered their ability too. So I think the cavalry, they're in a really difficult position now, being inside the bridge and so close to so many things. But I think that was as good as an activation as they could hope for. Outside of that, as I said, this unit had fired on the unit of line with the commander in it, and this unit, the Connecticut unit, advanced onto the road, and they actually rolled double 6 for their activation, and then I rolled the fighting cocks ability, which gives them +1 to the discipline for the rest of the game, which is pretty handy. So a little bit of a bottleneck here, I feel like now with the cavalry on the bridge. Might have to ponder what's going to happen to that. It may be irrelevant. The British may absolutely annihilate them in the next turn. Let's find out. Here we go. Okay, 2 costly failures of activation on turn 7. Both the lights failed to activate, so they've now really caused a bottleneck for any of the other units here. But also the militia cavalry failed to activate too. So that's sort of created a bit of a quagmire in the middle here. Now, outside of that, the unit on the left, the Highlanders, they advanced. I think they're in a good position. And the unit on the right with the commander, they rolled off their disorder marker. So they're out of trouble right now. And yet the unit of line on the road here, not able really to do anything. I'm also electing that you can't form line on a road. It's so narrow, it wouldn't really make sense. And that goes for both sides. So that being said, yeah, a fairly ineffective turn, other than the fact that they're sort of en masse here in a fairly commanding position. Now, as for the Americans, as I said, the militia in the bridge failed to activate. The unit of line here consolidated. They moved up close to or basically on the bridge at this point. And then this unit of line fired at the commander over here and his unit, but didn't do anything at all. So yeah, gonna move on to turn 8. This is a bit of a mess here. Hopefully we get some activations in what could be the final turn. Let's go see. Turn 8, and this is definitely gonna be interesting if it goes for another turn. So for starters, the natives failed their rally check and then succumbed to further disorder and routed. So they're out of the game. As far as the remaining units here on the table, the lights here were able to activate. I didn't rally them. I basically had them hop over the fence, giving both the line infantry here and the Highlanders here, who still hadn't fired, so they got the benefit of the first fire. They both fired at the cavalry militia unit, who is now down to a lone model, and they were able to pass any morale and etc. that they needed to. So they're still clinging on, as it were. And then lastly, the British commander here, his unit of line fired at the unit of line over here on the continental side, and they did lose a man, but no material impact beyond that, no other disorder. So with that being said, the cavalry is clinging on. They now have 2 pin markers, or 2 disorder markers, that they're going to need to oh no, they did. They rallied those off. Forgive me. They rallied those off in their turn, and then that was their activation basically. And then the unit of line here, the Connecticut line, advanced onto the bridge. So they are controlling the bridge now. Let's see. That's everything that happened within the turn. This could potentially be the final turn. And to clarify how this works is, we take the number to determine if there's an extra turn. We're gonna roll a dice, adding the turn number plus the roll of the dice. And if it's 14 or more, then the game is over, or we play out another turn. So 8 plus 2 is 10, so we're going to see another turn. All right, let's get on with turn 9. turn 9, and immediately this unit of line fired on that last cavalry militia rider, eliminating him and taking that unit off the board. And that's going to be pivotal because that sets the Americans at 33% casualties, which is a benefit to the victory points at the end of the game. Outside of that, the shock infantry or the shock troops moved onto the road and have a now commanding firing line down the road across the bridge. This unit of lights fired at the commander's unit of line, but wasn't able to do anything. And likewise with the British commander here, he tried a long shot, but to no avail. Then in return, the colonial line here took one more casualty on the lights, so dropping them down to 5 men now. That's important, but unfortunately, the Connecticut unit here failed their activation, so they're left sort of in a pretty very vulnerable spot. And if we do get an extra turn and those shock troops charge them, then I really do think it's all over for the Americans. Anyway, let's roll a dice and see if we have a further turn. So we're on that turn 9. 9 plus 1 is 10. So we do see a turn 10. All right, let's get on with that. I think this is going to be fairly inevitable. You know what? Let's do this. I'm going to grab a dice to try to activate the... we're just going to roll into this. All right, so this is turn 10. Right, so the Highlanders need to activate and roll the 6. So yes, they are going to activate. They'll charge the unit. Am I going to try and do this all one-handed while I'm holding a camera too? I think we all know how it's going to go. So I'm going to pause here and just give a recap of turn 10 as I normally would. Okay, yeah, as predicted, the Highlanders charged across the bridge and clashed into combat with the line infantry and was able to inflict 4 casualties, and then had a follow-up following that retreat that removed 2 more. So at this point, I am just going to call it. It's definitely a British victory, this game. Again, just really challenging. I think it's the list I've got here. They aren't quite working. Those militia just don't seem to cut it. Anyway, let's look at the aftermath here with the victory points or the honor points. So for the attacker, they get +3 honor if the bridge is taken. That most certainly is. And +1 honor for each of the defenders throwing up breastworks that have been taken. Over here, I think these can both be considered well and truly taken. So that's 5 victory points or honor points for the Americans, and then, for the British. And then for the defender, they get honor for holding the bridge. They didn't do that. And they get honor if they take less than 33% casualties. They didn't do that. So 0 honor points for the Americans, unfortunately. Again, fairly resounding victory. At one point, I really did think it could have gone more in favor of the Americans, but it wasn't to be. I feel like there was just too many units to overwhelm the defenders before the rescue party on this side of the bridge, or on this side of the river, I should say, could get to them. It was interesting. I felt kind of both sides racing to get to the bridge, but again, I'm not sure I totally agree with such a drastic reduction in points for the defenders. A full, what was it, 25%, I think, off the top of my head. Less, even though I know they're in a well-defended position. It just didn't seem to add up. But nonetheless, an interesting scenario. I do like it. That both sides weren't just fighting over the bridge. It was interesting to see them sort of racing along each side of the river to come to the to capture it. So that was interesting. But ultimately, again, another fun game, a very quick game. I know I'm doing turn-by-turn recaps, but with very little in between. Honestly, I think in some instances, giving the video recap of each turn took longer than the turn itself. So it's interesting, especially with failed activations. They just go so fast. But anyway, fun game. I hope everyone enjoyed watching it, and I'll be back with more soon. Thanks for watching.